With new lassos of fate entering the world of Wonder Woman and DC Comics, and the reveal of Wonder Woman having a daughter in the near future, we finally know who the other parent is. What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we're going to be talking about Wonder Woman #3, written by Tom King, with art by Daniel Sampere, and color by Tomeo Mori, and we might even address a little bit of something that goes on in the backup story to this that is also written by Tom King, as well as having art by Belen Ortega and color by Alejandro Sanchez. This issue, we actually get a lot of answers here, and they may not be very obvious answers if you have not been keeping up with anything going on with the current run of Wonder Woman by Tom King, so I would definitely recommend go check out my previous videos. As a matter of fact, yeah, go check out issue #1 up here, and you can kind of get caught up on what all's happening here, because there's technically a little bit of setup to this. Getting straight into it, in the previous issue, we saw the Wonder Woman had been attacked by the United States military, and it did not go in the favor of the United States military. It actually went quite the other direction. Wonder Woman is, in fact, Wonder Woman. So you would probably imagine a military force, even with tanks and jets, aren't going to do much to Wonder Woman. So Wonder Woman is taking the fight directly to the one person she knows that it needs to go to, and that is Sarge Steel. Sarge Steel is heading up the AXE, the Amazon extradition entity. She decides to go straight to the source and talk to Sarge Steel. And while Sarge Steel is going to do a lot of bluster, he's going to make a lot of threats, he's going to do what he's been doing typically since issue #1, constantly referring to Wonder Woman as a bitch, calling her a little girl, and basically being incredibly demeaning to her. None of this is surprising. We've been seeing this out of him for the past 2 issues, and while he was never quite as vulgar to Wonder Woman in the past, at least not on this level, he was always fairly dismissive of her in their previous interactions in the early aughts. Sarge Steel drops some information on us in this issue that is pretty big, and not something I was actually expecting to go in this direction. Now, once again, if you have not been keeping up, go check out my previous video for Wonder Woman #2. The video will be linked up here, but in that issue, we learned a bit more about Wonder Woman's history with the character Emily, who was the Amazon who has been cited as the murderer of upwards of 17, 19 some odd men in a pool hall that has led to anti-Amazon sentiment across the entire United States of America. Emily, we didn't really know a whole heap of a lot about. We only saw her in, just a handful of panels in the first issue, and by the time we get to the second issue, it took until the very end of that issue to realize that the character that Wonder Woman was interacting with was in fact Emily, albeit this was a much younger Emily, mind you, because at this point, Diana was still roughly a teenager herself. So now we know that Diana and Emily have history. They're not two characters that have never met each other before, and it would be safe to imagine that anyone who lived on Themyscira would be in at least some way even tangentially aware of who Wonder Woman is, and even know her maybe just a teensy tiny little bit. What we didn't know is that the character that we were hinted at and teased at, Trinity, who was supposed to be the daughter of Wonder Woman introduced into the DC Comics universe, albeit further down the line, and a character who is supposed to not only be the daughter of Wonder Woman, but as her name would imply, also be a part of the new Trinity that is Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, only with the Wonder Woman in the equation being Trinity, and the Superman and Batman in that equation being John Kent and Damian Wayne, respectively. And the question I posed in the previous video was, we don't know who the pappy is in this situation. We know that Wonder Woman is the mommy. Who's the pappy in this entire dynamic? And now we actually know a lot more about that. Sarge apparently has discovered that in the first issue, during that attack at the pool hall, Emily was wounded in some way, even if it was only superficially. It was just a single drop of blood that didn't match any of the men who were injured in that altercation, but turned out to be Amazonian DNA. And as it turns out, Sarge Steel learned that that Amazon in question, Emily, was pregnant. So now the question becomes, we don't really know who the pappy is still in the situation. However, we do know who the mommy is, and it's not Diana Prince. It's not Wonder Woman. Emily is the mother of Trinity in this situation. And not only is she the mother, but I'm gonna go on a limb and say there are gonna be events that are gonna come into play that are gonna easily lead us in the direction of learning the truth about what happens to Emily down the road. I think this very much teases the fact that Emily is probably gonna be killed off at some point, or at the very least, put in a position where she is, completely incapacitated or sent away, in prison, whatever. But I think death is probably the more likely outcome here. However, it does let us know that Trinity is not Diana's actual daughter, but she will be her mother in all the DNA, just based on the fact that she is going to help raise Trinity going forward after Emily meets whatever fate she is meant to meet. This also explains a lot, but it becomes more obvious now that neither Superman nor Batman factor into this equation at all, other than the fact that they helped raise Trinity, as we see in the backup story to this issue, where we see Damian and John babysitting Trinity when she's still a small child, like probably not much older than 5 or 6 years old, if even that. And even then, Trinity had powers. We see at a point when Damian, because he's angry at the fact that John has left him to take care of Trinity by himself, he takes Trinity out on a night of superheroing in Gotham City, and she helps him take down Killer Croc, even to the point where when we see her do a flying sidekick into Killer Croc's abdomen, we later learn that Killer Croc was hurt so bad from that flying sidekick that Damian had to take him to Dr. Midnight just to ensure that Killer Croc didn't die. So yeah, whatever is going on here, Trinity has had her powers for quite some time. She is an Amazon, even if only half Amazon. That much is said by the Sovereign, because as we talked about before, the person who has been narrating these issues is the new Wonder Woman villain, Sovereign, and we established in the previous video when we discussed some points from the previous issues of Wonder Woman number 800 that the person that Sovereign is narrating to is not so much the reader, but towards Trinity herself. The Sovereign points out that Trinity is only half Amazonian. She has very likely a normal human parent, and that just honestly kind of deepens the mystery in who Trinity truly is and where she truly comes from, because now we're pretty much back to square one on her origin. Now, with all that said, there's definitely some other interesting stuff that comes up in this issue. We learn a bit more about the lasso of lies and how it truly works, and it works about roughly the way you would probably imagine. It works by virtue of the person wielding it holding the lasso, and the other person who's going to be afflicted by it also holding the lasso, and the person who wants to inflict their lies upon their victim, they basically just say whatever they want, and the person ultimately believes it, to the point we see one of the men who was fighting against Wonder Woman in issue number 2, he has been called to the Sovereign's home, and the Sovereign, while he's using a lot of flowery dialogue and playing awfully friendly and chummy with the soldier who survived Wonder Woman's attack, that soldier, as he's talking to him, we discover, is not that bent out of shape about the fact that Wonder Woman kicked his ass. As a matter of fact, he half expected it. He did not believe that he was going to be any threat to Wonder Woman whatsoever, and this is just a job to him. He's not taking any of this incredibly seriously, or personally for that matter. However, the Sovereign does something in this issue, and I know that there are some people who don't like when I dive into the political commentary, or make the mistake of thinking that when I dive into the political commentary that I'm doing it just because, but I do this because, well, Tom King did, so it makes sense. I would honestly not be doing my job as a comic book commentator if I didn't discuss the political nuances of the things that Tom King is clearly putting in front of us. That would be a miscarriage of comic book commentating. That would honestly be ignoring at least a third, if not half, of the comic itself. But I'm gonna get political here for a second. So hashtag sorry, not sorry. That said, the Sovereign, I kind of think I see what Tom King is channeling here with the Sovereign. I'm gonna poke a little bit at everyone's favorite Top G, Andrew Tate, as well as a lot of other people's, favorite crying man, Jordan Peterson. Not saying that the Sovereign is a one-to-one on either of these men, because clearly he is not, but he is kind of an amalgam of these two, and even kind of encompasses some of the hallmarks of the manosphere. For those that don't know what that is, and honestly, if you don't know what the manosphere is, then you're actually better off than most. But basically, it is a contingent of content creators that, wide range from across YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, X, whatever the hell you want to call it this week, as well as other social media, entities. These are people who basically make their entire life revolve around shitting on women. And not just shitting on women, but also trying to get young men roughly around the age of teenagers to maybe early 20s. But honestly, any age man is susceptible and or the target audience of this, but those are just the key ones. That's the key demographic. And try and get these men to believe that women are in some way responsible for all of the troubles that they have, even the troubles that are clearly their own fault. You can't get a girlfriend. That's not your fault. It's the girl's fault for not wanting to give you a chance. You're a 30-year-old virgin? Well, you know what? That's not your fault. It's the woman's fault for not giving it to you. All of the ills that you suffer in your life are not your fault. No, these are the fault of women. All of that aside, that is what the Sovereign is shooting for. And at least in this instance, not saying that's his whole blanket statement, but that is what he represents in this issue, is that the soldier in question that I mentioned earlier, he doesn't care about Wonder Woman. He's not butthurt about any of this. But Tom King literally dedicates at least, I would dare say, 2 pages, even almost maybe 2.5 pages overall to this whole thing. And the Sovereign telling this man that, yes, you are aggrieved by what Wonder Woman did to you. You are upset by how she emasculated you and that she made you feel less than. She made you feel less than a man. She made you feel like garbage. She took something from you that you can never get back. You have been robbed of your masculinity, and now this Amazon, this woman is the whole reason behind it, and pushing this man, manipulating him in such a way that he is completely 180'd on his entire perspective of how the whole situation went down. He literally went from in one panel saying that it wasn't that big a deal. She swung a tank around, took us down, we retreated. It wasn't even a big thing. It took maybe a handful of minutes, and now it's all over and done, and I'm ready to move on with my life, to now this man is writing a manifesto, basically breaking down, and we don't get to see the whole write-up of everything that he says, but in the letter we see, it says literally, in her actions that day, Wonder Woman denied my rights as a man to exist in this, and he doesn't get to finish, we don't get to see what he says after that, but basically, in this world, and ultimately unalives himself because the Sovereign told him to do so. That's just how powerful the lasso of lies is. If you enjoyed this video and you want to keep up with more of my coverage of Wonder Woman as well as other comics from Marvel and DC, make sure you click that subscribe button and tap that notification bell so that way you don't miss anything. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, let me know what you thought about Wonder Woman #3. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.